Picture this. You're going about your normal Tuesday, right? Just making coffee, doing your thing, when suddenly, without any warning at all, you are violently pulled out of the present moment.
Oh, it's so unsettling.
Right. And you aren't just like imagining things. You are physically experiencing fragments of your own brutal death. And it's set weeks in the future.
Yeah.
So once the shock wears off, you're faced with this impossible question. Do you just accept this as some, inevitable nightmare that you can't escape? Or do you treat your own impending murder as a puzzle to be solved?
I mean, it really is just a terrifying psychological trap. You're essentially locked in a room with your own demise, and you have, well, absolutely no idea where the walls are.
Exactly. And that terrifying premise is what brings us here today. We are doing a deep dive into a draft text called Time Sickness by Max and Claude.
Such a fascinating read.
It really is. It's this incredibly dense, brilliant intersection of speculative psychology and a really tense thriller. So our mission today is to explore the clinical, the philosophical, and frankly, the deeply human implications of this fictional condition they call temporal displacement disorder, or TDD.
Right, TDD.
Yeah, and we're going to unpack whether foreknowledge of our fate is a gift, a torture, or just a massive call to action.
And we should probably ground the listener right away on what TDD actually is in the context of this text, because it makes a very deliberate distinction from the science fiction tropes we're normally used to.
Totally.
Like, this is not a story about magical time travel.
Right, so no DeLoreans, no sports almanacs.
None of that. There's no vehicle. And more importantly, there is zero mastery over the experience. The text treats temporal displacement disorder not as a superpower, but as a catastrophic psychological glitch.
Glitch, right.
Yeah, it's categorized in the clinical literature of this world as time slippage.
Slippage? I mean, how does the text describe that actually feeling for a patient? Because it sounds awful.
Oh, it is. The closest real-world parallel the authors draw is to motion sickness.
Okay.
Think about how motion sickness actually works in the brain. There's a fundamental collapse of correspondence between what your body is reporting and what your mind is perceiving.
Right, like when you're on a boat.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Your eyes tell your brain that you are sitting perfectly still in a boat cabin, but your inner ear tells your brain you're bobbing up and down.
And the resulting mismatch just makes you violently ill.
Right. So in time sickness, it's a very similar mismatch, but on a chronological level.
Wow.
The mind simply refuses to stay in its lane. The patient's body is firmly rooted in the present, but their consciousness is dragged into moments that are happening in the wrong order.
Okay, let's unpack this, because I'm trying to wrap my head around how disorienting that would be. Is it like a split screen in their mind?
Kind of, but...
Or, wait, if we think about it like listening to a vinyl record. You're enjoying the current song, just living your normal life, but the needle suddenly skips forward to the final terrifying track of the album.
That's a great way to look at it.
And it's playing that future track simultaneously right over the current song.
Yeah.
How terrifying must it be to try and find an anchor in reality when your own internal timeline is just skipping like that?
It would be completely debilitating. I mean, the cognitive load alone would be crushing.
Yeah.
And that actually brings us to how this is treated in the clinical reality of the text.
Right, the therapy side of it.
Exactly. We're introduced to Dr. Yoon, who's a specialist who has treated dozens of TDD patients. And when you read the description of her office, it's designed entirely to counteract that exact terror you just mentioned.
It's basically a sanctuary.
Yes.
The text mentions it smells like old paper and bergamot, right?
It does. And that's not just a nice aesthetic choice by the authors. It's a strictly clinical one. Yeah. Olfactory processing our sense of smell is directly wired to the amygdala and hippocampus in the brain. It is our most grounding, memory-linked sense. So Dr. Yoon deliberately curates this space to be profoundly anchoring.
So no weird hospital smells?
No, and no fluorescent lights that hum or flicker either. Just warm, static amber lamps and towers of heavy physical books. Everything in the room is meant to say, you are here right now in this room.
Which is an absolute desperate necessity for her newest patient, Caleb Morrow.
Definitely.
Because Caleb is a 34-year-old structural engineer, and the text makes it very clear early on that he isn't just experiencing, like, mild déjà vu.
Oh, far from it. Caleb has what the text clinical literature calls a forward presentation, but worse than that, it's a self-directed forward presentation.
Meaning he's seeing himself.
He is experiencing the end of his own life.
God, what does that actually look like for him during an episode? I mean, is it just a vague feeling of doom?
No, it is brutally sensory. which ties right back to that motion sickness analogy. The brain is processing it as immediate physical reality. When an episode hits, Caleb literally feels the wet, cold stone of a pavement against his cheek.
Oh,
He smells rain and heavy diesel exhaust. He hears canal water sloshing nearby.
that's not specific.
It is. He hears his own labored, ragged breathing as his lungs fail. And most horrifying of all, he can sense a figure standing right over him.
But he doesn't know who it is?
He can't see the face. The visual field in these displacement episodes is dramatically narrowed. It's almost like extreme tunnel vision, mostly focused on the ground.
Which sets up this totally wild premise. Because Caleb doesn't just go to Dr. Yoon and say, hey, please give me medication to make this stop.
No, he asks for the exact opposite.
Right. He wants her to help him navigate the episode so he can look up and see who was murdering him. But doesn't that go completely against the standard therapy for TDD?
It flies in the face of all her training. I mean, Dr. Yoon's standard approach isn't about mining these traumatic episodes for clues like a detective. Her job is mapping the geography of the episode to help patients escape it.
Mapping the geography, meaning what exactly?
She focuses on sensory anchors in the present to pull them back. For example, the text describes Caleb having a very specific 4-minute pour-over coffee ritual every single morning.
Oh, right, the coffee bloom.
Yes. He watches the hot water hit the dark grounds. He smells the bloom of the coffee. That ritual is meant to be a cognitive tether. But his time slippage is so severe that he's getting ripped into his death fragment right in the middle of pouring the water.
Wow. The tension there is just incredible. He wants to dive deeper into the trauma to solve a crime that hasn't even happened yet.
Which obviously forces Dr. Yoon into a corner.
Yeah, and it also brings up this massive philosophical debate that the authors weave into the clinical literature of this world. The whole debate over whether the future can actually be changed at all.
Yes, this is where the text gets incredibly layered. We see this collision between the philosophy of fate and clinical psychiatry.
So good.
The text outlines two major kind of warring schools of thought regarding these forward displaced episodes. First, you have the determinists.
Okay, let's unpack them first. What's their deal?
So the determinists, led by these researchers in the text named Vasquez and Kwan, they argue that the displaced future is completely fixed.
Like set in stone.
Yes, it is an inescapable point on a linear timeline. In their view, visiting the future doesn't allow you to prevent it. The only therapeutic value of seeing your own death is preparation.
So basically, helping the patient come to terms with their mortality. That is the ultimate grim diagnosis. Just, you are going to be murdered. Let's just make sure you're emotionally ready for it.
Exactly. It's palliative care for the timeline.
Yikes.
But on the other side of the aisle, you have the possibilists. Their argument is much more dynamic. They believe that a forward displaced episode is merely an experience of one possible future. It might be the absolute most probable future given all current variables, but the very act of a patient experiencing it fundamentally changes the variables of the present moment.
Because now they have new information.
Precisely. And by altering the present with that foreknowledge, you inherently change the probability of that specific future ever actually collapsing into reality.
Okay, so Dr. Yoon decides to take a massive professional risk here. She leans into the possibilist theory. She develops this dangerous new protocol to help Caleb navigate his episodes rather than pulling him out of them.
She does. She uses a technique she calls peripheral release. Because every time Caleb tries to force his attention upward to look at the killer's face, the episode violently destabilizes and he snaps right back to the present.
Wait, why does looking directly at the killer break the vision? Like, does the text explain the mechanism there?
It does, actually, and it's a brilliant nod to real neuroscience.
Oh, really?
Yeah, when you force direct, concentrated focus on something, you activate the highly analytical, executive functioning parts of your frontal lobe.
Okay.
In the context of TDD, activating that intense analytical awareness essentially reminds the brain that it is currently sitting in a chair in a doctor's office.
Ah, causing the temporal slip to collapse.
Exactly.
Oh, that makes so much sense. It's like when you're having a lucid dream, and the second you try too hard to read a sign or, like, look at a clock in the dream, you just wake up.
That is a perfect analogy.
Uh-huh.
So Dr. Yoon tells him to use soft attention. She instructs him to engage the peripheral vision, which is tied more to subconscious passive processing.
Just relax into it.
Right. She tells him, stop hunting for the killer.
Yeah.
Just let the environment exist around you. Notice what is in the periphery.
And doing that leads to what I think is the most chilling moment in the entire text. Caleb goes under. He uses soft attention. He senses the figure standing over his dying body. And as Caleb's gaze drifts toward the killer in the periphery, the killer actually steps back.
Yes, the figure reacts.
Wait, I have to push back on the determinist theory right here. Because if Vasquez and Kwan are right, and this is just a fixed pre-recorded event, like a tape playing out, how can the figure react to Caleb's gaze in real time?
Right.
Doesn't this completely disprove the determinist theory? Doesn't it prove it's a live feed rather than a tape?
That is exactly the terrifying conclusion Dr. Yoon and Caleb reach. If the killer steps back, it means the killer isn't just a static projection or some shadow in a memory.
It's real.
The killer is a real person who, in that impending future moment, suddenly becomes aware that they are being watched by their dying victim.
That is so deeply unsettling. The killer is calibrating their response because they realize Caleb is looking at them, which means whoever this is, they are fully aware of what they're doing and they know they're being witnessed.
It takes the situation from a theoretical psychological phenomenon to an immediate, premeditated, and deeply personal threat.
Yeah.
It forces Dr. Yoon and Caleb to ask the hardest question. Who in Caleb's life would have the motive, the physical proximity, and the specific psychological makeup to orchestrate a murder like this?
And I really don't think any reader is prepared for the reveal.
No, not at all.
The killer is Marcus Vail. Marcus is a highly respected science journalist, but way more importantly, he is Caleb's ex-boyfriend.
The betrayal is profound. They had broken up 14 months prior, but Marcus had maintained a very careful, meticulously calibrated friendship with Caleb ever since.
So calculating.
To really understand how Marcus could do this, the text dives into his professional philosophy.
Right. There's that excerpt from a conference paper Marcus wrote.
Yes, Marcus argues that for his specific brand of immersive journalism, the intimacy and the journalism are not separable.
Oof.
He doesn't just interview subjects. He believes in completely disappearing into the material. His method is to spend 18 months or more building deep, structural trust with a subject, just waiting for the moments when their curated, public mask finally slips.
And we find out he's been weaponizing this exact philosophy against Caleb. The text talks about Marcus writing articles on the neuroscience of trust, exploring how the brain actually confuses familiarity with safety. How does that work?
It's an exploitation of the amygdala. The amygdala is our brain's threat detection center. When we encounter something new, the amygdala is highly active.
Looking for danger.
Right. But with repeated, consistent exposure to a person without any immediate harm, the amygdala habituates. It essentially powers down its threat radar around that specific person.
Wow.
So Marcus hacked Caleb's neurochemistry. By constantly being present casual coffee dates, checking in this Claire, Marcus ensured Caleb's brain hardwired him as safe.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me. Just thinking about this in the context of Caleb's career, Caleb is a structural engineer.
Yes.
His entire life is about building bridges, calculating loads, finding stress points, and understanding tolerances. And Marcus essentially treated Caleb exactly the way a structural engineer treats a building material.
That is a brilliant way to look at it.
Right. I mean, Marcus was intentionally building a psychological bridge with Caleb, but he was building it with a fatal hidden flaw. He didn't view Caleb as a human being. He viewed him merely as a load-bearing element in his own twisted narrative structure.
And the premeditation backs up that structural analogy perfectly. Marcus wasn't just observing Caleb's descent into TDD. He was actively curating the narrative environment.
He was setting the stage.
Yes. 3 months before Caleb was even officially diagnosed, Marcus called Caleb's sister, Bridget, totally out of the blue. He feigned this deep concern, asking her about Caleb's mental state, quietly planting the idea that Caleb was losing his grip on reality.
He was establishing a fake paper trail of mental decline.
He was laying the foundation for a cover story. So when Caleb eventually died, everyone would just say, oh, well, Marcus tried to warn us he was unwell.
That is so sick.
Marcus even asked Caleb directly if he could write a feature article about his rare TDD case. And when Caleb refused, Marcus didn't argue. He just adapted his plan.
Because in one of the final displacement episodes, Caleb finally realizes what Marcus is holding in his hand while standing over Caleb's dying body on that wet pavement. It's not a weapon.
No.
It's a phone. Marcus is recording the death. He is actively narrating Caleb's murder as it happens.
He is creating a definitive, first-person journalistic account of a TDD patient's predicted demise. It is the ultimate scoop, purchased with the life of someone who trusted him.
Unbelievable.
To Marcus's chillingly coherent logic, the care he showed Caleb over the years was entirely real, but the journalism project was also real. The murder isn't a crime of passion for him. It is just the necessary, inevitable conclusion to his magnum opus.
It's pure sociopathy disguised as professional dedication. But as they uncover all this horror, a new problem emerges. Time is quite literally running out. The future they've been analyzing is accelerating toward them.
Yes, this introduces a fascinating mechanic of TDD that the clinical literature calls interval narrowing, or extreme convergence.
How does that work? Is it like a countdown?
Think of it like a temporal Doppler effect, or the gravitational pull of a black hole. As the chronological linear timeline gets closer to the actual displaced event, the temporal distance between the 2 points shrinks.
Okay, that makes sense.
Because the distance is shorter, the overlapping signals fire much more frequently. As the actual murder approaches in real time, Caleb's episodes dramatically increase in frequency, and the duration of each episode gets shorter and more violent.
The text shows this perfectly. Caleb goes from having a few manageable episodes a week to suddenly being hit with 11 episodes in a single day.
Which is the ultimate red flag for Dr. Yoon. According to the clinical literature she consults, hitting that frequency indicates that the extreme convergence point has been reached.
The timelines are touching.
The overlapping timelines are collapsing. The murder is going to happen within the next 36 to 72 hours.
Wow. And thanks to the peripheral release technique, Caleb finally manages to identify the specific location of the murder. It's not just a random street by a canal. It is Caleb's proudest creation. It's a 40-meter pedestrian bridge he designed himself, featuring a very distinct asymmetric deck curve over an urban waterway. Marcus chose to kill Caleb at the place that meant the absolute most to him.
The cruelty of that location choice forces Dr. Yoon into an impossible ethical corner as a medical professional. The authors frame this as a choice between two pictures.
The first picture and the second picture, right? Remind me what those are.
So the first picture means Dr. Yoon chooses to believe her patient completely. It means taking his highly subjective, scientifically unprovable vision of the future and treating it as an objective, impending reality.
Which would require her to act on it outside the confines of therapy.
Exactly. And the second picture is the safe, traditional clinical route. It means treating Caleb's visions purely as a delusion.
Just a symptom.
Right. It means looking at him and seeing the fragmented mind of a grieving man who is organizing his mental trauma around the face of an ex-boyfriend he still subconsciously loves.
So what does this all mean for the concept of therapy? Because Dr. Yoon risks her entire career, her medical license, and potentially her own life, because she ultimately chooses the first picture. She chooses to believe that a psychological symptom is a literal prophecy. Where exactly is the line between being a dedicated, validating doctor and becoming an active accomplice to a patient's potential delusion?
That is the central dilemma that elevates this text from a thriller into a profound philosophical work.
Yeah.
The core belief the authors argue for is that sometimes strict clinical agnosticism is simply insufficient. Hiding behind a therapeutic boundary shouldn't mean sitting quietly with a notepad while you watch your patient walk into a death trap just because you refuse to engage with the reality of their lived experience.
Knowledge is only valuable if you're willing to apply it.
Exactly. Dr. Yoon realizes that protecting the rigid clinical boundary of her profession is fundamentally less important than protecting the living, breathing human being sitting on her couch.
And that realization leads us straight into the climax. The gravitational pull of extreme convergence becomes too much for Caleb. He slips away from a friend's apartment where he was supposed to be hiding, and he leaves a terrifying 10-word note for Dr. Yoon that just says, the voice called, "I know the when, it is now."
He goes straight to his asymmetric bridge over the canal.
Yep.
But because Dr. Yoon chose the first picture, she doesn't just call a psychiatric hospital to report a wandering patient. She breaks every rule she has left. She reaches out to a friend, Detective Ha Yoon-song, and they race to the canal walkway.
And when they arrive, the geometry of the murder is laid out perfectly, exactly as Caleb saw it in his fractured visions. Marcus is standing up on the bridge with his phone, recording, ready to document the definitive end of his subject. But Marcus isn't the one doing the dirty work.
Right, which neatly answers a lingering mystery from Caleb's visions. Marcus has a hired accomplice.
Oh, right.
A man named Daniel Reyes. Reyes is the one who corners Caleb down on the towpath in a narrow, shadowy blind spot under the road bridge.
That perfectly explains the gap in Caleb's episodes. It explains why he never saw the face of the person who initially grabbed him and forced him to the ground.
Yes, Marcus had meticulously orchestrated the entire scenario so he could remain the detached observer. He wanted to narrate from above, keeping his hands clean while his accomplice carried out the actual violence below.
But because Dr. Yoon and Detective Song arrive and intercept them right at that critical moment of extreme convergence, the timeline shatters.
Yes.
The murder is stopped. Marcus and his accomplice are arrested right on the spot.
Which brings us to the aftermath and one final, really fascinating clinical detail that the text calls the resolution fragment.
Okay, what happens there?
Once Caleb physically survives that 72-hour window and Marcus is locked in custody, Caleb's violent, forward-displacing episodes completely stop.
The glitch is fixed. The timeline catches up to itself.
It does, but with one beautiful, poignant exception. His very final TDD episode is entirely different from the agonizing ones that brought him to therapy. He isn't lying on the wet pavement struggling to breathe.
Right. He is simply standing upright on his asymmetric bridge, looking peacefully down at the water flowing by.
The timeline recognized that the future changed.
It's the ultimate validation of the possibilist theory. The future was never a fixed tape playing on a loop. It was merely a high probability. And by observing it, analyzing the mechanics of it, and most importantly, taking brave action on it, Caleb and Dr. Yoon completely rewrote the ending.
It is such a gripping, masterful way to explore the concepts of trust, reality, and human agency. And as we wrap up, I want to bring these themes directly to you, the listener, because while we don't suffer from temporal displacement disorder, we all have people in our lives who curate their realities.
Absolutely.
Marcus Vail was an absolute master at presenting a version of himself that felt deeply authentic, but was actually entirely calculated to exploit a vulnerability.
It forces a profound question about intimacy. Caleb's ultimate tragedy wasn't just that he foresaw his own death. It was that the architect of his death used Caleb's own capacity for trust and love as the murder weapon. Exactly. This story forces you to ask, who are you trusting with your own uncurated version? Who gets to see you when your mask slips? And if we think back to Caleb's profession, how strong are the actual structural foundations of your own relationships? Are they built to bear the load of real life? Or is there a hidden flaw just waiting for the right amount of stress?
It's a heavy thing to audit the people around you, but a necessary one.
Which leaves us with one final, lingering thought for you to mull over today. In the world of this text, the possibilists were right. Experiencing a highly probable future gave Caleb the knowledge and the power to change it. But what about us in the real world? Does the reverse hold true?
Wait, what do you mean?
Think about our everyday anxieties, our deeply human obsession with visualizing worst-case scenarios. If we're constantly projecting our minds into the future, visualizing our failures, our breakups, our disasters, could that act as our own personal, non-clinical time sickness?
Oh, wow.
By constantly rehearsing our fears in our minds, are we actually preparing ourselves to prevent them? Or by fixing our attention so intensely on the crash, are we accidentally steering ourselves right into it?
Turning our own anxiety into a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Exactly. So the next time you find your mind skipping forward to a terrifying track that hasn't even happened yet, take a breath. Remember that the needle is still in the present. You are not trapped in a room with your own demise, as long as you remember that you still have the power to walk out the door.